Genevieve Weynerowski, welcome to Writers in Relationship.
Thank you, Gail. Hi.
Hi. We have such a funny how we got to know each other story. So I wonder if you could tell. I think people will find it amusing.
I like to think it's unusual.
Yeah.
Yes, my daughter had just moved into her first apartment, and being a mom, I was doing my bit and going on Facebook Marketplace and seeing if I could find pretty things for her apartment. And that is how I ended up at your and Erin's new apartment. You just moved from Vermont, and you were incredibly friendly and warm, like so many Americans used to be. No, kidding. Still are, still are. And we started chatting, and somehow we discovered that we were both writers. And um, yeah, you were just so open and suggested that we get together, and so we did. And so we did. And it was wonderful because it's not always that easy to make new friends and new writer friends at that, at our stage of life. At least not for me. I think maybe for you it's easier because you certainly made it seem easy. But yeah,
No, no,
that's how
you were super open. And actually what the detail that you left out was that it was a moldy rug.
well, that's neither here nor there.
It's
It's true. I didn't buy the rug.
horrible. I mean, it was beautiful, like a beautiful, like pink and
It had lovely, yeah, it was
but the last
beautiful.
apartment was covered in mold. So I was like, don't buy the rug, Jen, don't buy it.
Don't buy the rug, but can we still be friends?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it all
Yeah,
worked
that's
out.
super fun. So just tell us,
Yeah.
and people don't necessarily, everything's by Zoom. So tell us where you are and a little bit about your setting and how that and you have some really unique things about where you live. And I'd love to hear about how that impacts your writing or not.
Let's see. Well, I'm sort of living in the sort of countryside, I guess. This is what I call it because I'm not out in the wilds. Unlike my vision during COVID, where I was really indulging in some prepper fantasy. I would go live in northern Quebec and I don't know, live off the land or something. God, it didn't go that way. I've actually kind of circled back after decades of living in Montreal and traveling around the world quite a bit to pretty close to where I spent many years as a child. As it happens, I have family around here, and I live across from a beautiful national park. And I got a dog during COVID, and here I am, comfortably ensconced in my semi-rural slash suburban house, and enjoying it much more than I ever thought I would. But yeah, how does it affect my writing? Not well, honestly. I've discovered a lot of horticulture that I guess was suppressed in all the many decades I spent in the gritty cities. So I seem to just sort of look out the window, get distracted by all the nature, and wander out like a wraith, like, oh, how can I contribute? How can I participate in nature? So I would say living in the city was actually better for my intellectual labors than living in the country. Um, Having said that, there's still hope, Gail, especially with somebody like you in my corner
But it's funny because
encouraging me.
you're creative. I mean, I've been to your place and what you've done is it's a work of art. Like it really
Thank you.
actually is. It's labor, but it's a vision. And
Yeah.
when I read your first piece for Hodgepodge, I saw a lot of your property in that writing.
Mm. Hmm. Well, that's interesting. Did you?
Well, just the connection to
The forest.
natural elements. Like there
Yeah.
was a very strong connection to trees and just the
Yeah.
natural world. I felt that very strongly.
Well, I also have a very sort of romantic with a capital R aesthetic, I think, which you can sort of see in the way I decorate my home and my adoration of, flowers and color and all that sort of thing. And nature too, a kind of semi civilized nature. So something that's kind of teetering on the verge between wildness um, and aesthetic intent, I guess. So yes, I mean, being here, that really has kind of allowed me to explore that side of me. So, Art Nouveau, uh, sort of imaginative stories of the late 19th century, um, the aesthetics and preoccupations of the early Habsburg Empire. I mean, not to get too highfalutin, but I have a very romantic imagination, and nature really does lend itself, and gardening and uh, yeah, just being out of doors for me does is and it is part of the expression of my love for I guess beauty with a capital B. I mean, again, kind of highfalutin, but it's true. And I'm just very drawn to it. And also maybe it's a little bit easier than right. Just being out and making fabulous gardens. I don't know. It's something new also. But there
Yeah,
you have it.
and sometimes I wonder, because we writers have to live, like we have to immerse ourselves in life so we have something to say. So I
Hmm.
wonder if there's a natural, interestingly, like the natural world, if a period of more dormancy is just normal, right? Like, I mean, I'm not one of these people like, oh, I write every day between 7 and like I can't be
But
that.
you do, Gail.
No,
I
I
think you do.
don't.
You're very disciplined.
No, I really don't.
I was sure you did.
No, this is
So,
how it goes. Like, first of all, if
mm,
there's no deadline, it doesn't happen. Have
yeah,
so there's
that's the
deadlines, and
yeah.
it's typically like, oh, I have to get something to Pam in 3 days. I better sit my ass down and do, like it really that's
Yeah.
what like people are I don't
Maybe we're all like that somewhere.
I don't
Okay.
know. But I
Yeah.
just think there's this like I wonder when there's this new period of growth. Like I'm thinking this horticultural thing, like that could end up I don't know. That's just my everything influences everything else. So I just wonder.
I would say so. I mean, I haven't really thought about it all in relation to writing, honestly. It's more just in relation to creativity and enjoyment of life
Yeah.
and living life to the fullest. And um yeah, I mean, I think that living in the city, I mean, I love cities and I particularly love big cities and like the messier and more chaotic and more confusing and beautiful they are, the happier I am. And that was kind of how I lived for such a long time, especially I think because I spent so many years in the countryside as a child that I just embraced the city life. Um, so I guess I probably, I was just not exposed to kind of this kind of life for most of my adult years. And I think it's just getting back into it. I think it's just life, how, in all seriousness, how it affects my writing. I think it's probably softened a bit. I mean, I think that my interests and preoccupations probably are more oriented toward other things. Um, Although having said that, yes, I think that's probably true. I think that nature is showing up more in my writing now than it did before, for better or for worse. Gail, time will tell.
Tell us just a little bit about like your writing practice and when you started writing and how that kind of evolved.
Like everything else in my life, writing is kind of an all or nothing proposition. So typically, when I'm writing, um, I'm sort of all in for many hours, days, perhaps even weeks at a stretch. And it really is about it's I do get into kind of the zone or flow really quickly if I'm doing something that I like or something I'm really drawn to write about. And then I just, the rest of the world falls away. Um, so that's typically how I do things. And I suppose that's probably how I approach everything else, including living in the country and creating 55 gardens in 3 years and all that sort of thing. I think it's just the way my brain and my mind works. So, um, yes. Is that your question?
Well, how do you remember how old you were when you first like when you wrote a
Yes.
story?
Yeah, I think I was. around 4 or so. My mother gave me a typewriter when I was 3 because I was so into I don't know how I got these notions in my head, but I was pretty sure that I wanted to be a writer. I remember it being extremely young, and I remember my mom saying, "Yes, you were really insistent, so I got you a little typewriter when you were 3." But she also got me a little machine gun when I was 2, plastic. Yeah, it was a long time ago, okay? Times are different. Um, so this whole typewriter thing may be apocryphal. However, as a really young child, I had a whole outfit that I had. I can't remember if I've told you this before, Gail. I had a special beret that I had to wear. It was an unfortunate color. It was white instead of black, but it was all I had access to. And I had this little quilted Chinese jacket that I would do up. And anytime I felt the urge to write, like when I was 7 years old, I would say, "Okay, I have to go upstairs and put on my outfit." Still say, put on my little hat and my little jacket and get out my notebooks and start writing. Yes, I am like a very theatrical person, I think at heart. One could say a little melodramatic. So yes, the setting, the costume, all of that were very important to me. Yeah. And then I would just dive in. And I can't speak to the quality of what I was producing, but I could say I was really good at the costume. What Chinese quilted jackets have to do with writing? You'd have to ask my 6-year-old self. I don't know. But it seemed very important at the time.
Do you remember
Yeah.
any of the storylines of any of the early pieces that you wrote?
I think they were, pretty kid-like. There was stuff about snapping turtles and my mom and how nice she was. And um, yeah, I also was from an early age, I also have a very dark imagination. So I remember thinking and talking a lot during a period. I think when I was like around 8, like maybe grade 3, I was very preoccupied with prison camps and having to escape across the steppes. Yeah, of Siberia. So why? I don't know. I have a lot of siblings and my parents had a lot of friends, and I guess there was just a lot of chitter chatter going around. And I don't know if I heard stuff on the radio or on TV. In any case, how it is that I got these ideas in my head and decided that they were very important to make up stories around, who can say? But yes. So, I liked puppies. I like to think about escaping prison. Oh, speaking of puppies, I just have to open the door for the
That
dog.
was excellent timing. Luna knows what her cue is.
Exactly.
What do you remember the first thing you ever published and what that was about?
Oh gosh. The first thing I ever published, I think it was a story about a trip. Oh, is this right? Yeah, I think it was a story about a trip I took to Mexico. Um, I lived in Oaxaca, Mexico for about 6 months in my early 20s. And then I sort of wrote a kind of impressionistic memoir, maybe, I don't know, 5,000 words or something like that. And I had it published in a Canadian magazine. And yeah, um, I think I was really proud of myself, actually. I remember that. It was really exciting. And it was published in a magazine. I think that's the piece called Matrix. I don't even know if that magazine exists anymore, but yeah. And at that point, I had this huge fear of flying, and I think there was a fair number of paragraphs dedicated to this flight I took from Mexico City to whatever it was, the capital of Chiapas, on my way to Guatemala. And the dog. Um, and how terrifyingly close we flew over the mountains. Oh goodness. I'm so sorry. Okay, Luna, we're just leaving the door open. Um, yeah, so Yeah, that was the first piece I had published. And oh, the excitement. It was just amazing.
Very,
And
very,
then after that, so that was kind of in my 20s. I did a lot of travel. So I did a trip to Borneo at one point. I have some far-flung relatives deep in the jungle, and so I took a really amazing trip, and I wrote about it for newspapers. And so yeah, I think that was yeah. So I did sort of travel writing, but very kind of personal. It wasn't about where to eat out and things. It was really like a lot of my writing sort of um, how would you describe it? It was evocative, evocative, impressionistic, um, emotional, kind of personal. Yeah.
yeah, very cool.
Yeah.
Just to shift gears a little bit, I'm fascinated by relationships and how relationships sort of impact everything that we do. And I'm wondering if there's a relationship that's kind of very alive for you now and how that might wind into your writing or affect it in any way. And you can use
Um,
that loosely. People talk about relationships with all kinds of things and people and
yeah.
things and
Um, gosh, I was going to name my daughter because she's particularly alive for me right now because she's staying with me and she's moving to Europe and so there's just, a lot around my early 20s daughter now doing kind of what I did at her age, was just to go and travel and have her parents eat her dust. But but we're very close and I'm very involved with what she's doing, where she's going and all that sort of thing on a practical and emotional level, I guess. Um, but I'm not sure that that relationship is really impacting my writing. It just it's uppermost in my mind. I think that the relationship, if there's any that's impacting my writing, it's probably with the figure of this is kind of the figure of the strong man through the ages. I mean, I'm very, very, very alert to, maybe over alert to the political climate at the moment. Um, uh, and it really is very preoccupying. And so I'm thinking a lot about authoritarianism and fascism and sort of personal and community political activity and but I guess more to the point, just sort of the personality, the authoritarian personality. And I've actually wanted to be writing more about it than I have, but it's so what's going on is so sort of multidimensional and so huge that I haven't quite figured out how I want to write about it. This would not be fiction. This would be sort of more political commentary, which I've done in the past as well, quite a bit. Um, but I'm not quite sure how to even begin to approach it. I sort of feel like right now, sort of more marinating in it than writing. But I suspect that that's going to take up a fair bit of my um, writerly energies in the not too distant future.
do
Yeah,
you process things through writing or do you process them and then write about them?
that's an excellent question. I think both. Um, yeah, I mean, writing is certainly helpful, I think, for me in terms of processing. Yeah, I mean, sometimes I'll have a sort of, especially when it comes to kind of political or philosophical stuff, I have this strong feeling or a kind of vision of an idea, and it's in the writing that it comes out. Yeah, that it gets elaborated. Yeah, because I think when it's in my mind, it's just sort of this big jumble of things. And that's what I'm dealing with right now, the big jumble of things. And actually sitting down and writing does help to distill and illuminate for me kind of my stance on it for sure. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a curious thing because it'll like for me it'll happen in different ways depending on what I'm writing about. Like I'm starting to work on a an essay about my relationship with my mother, and that it was provoked by, of course, a deadline. A friend of mine who has a small press is collecting stories or essays about walls. So I was
Hmm.
really interested in, these walls between my mother that are sort of breaking down, but I've done most of the thinking about that already. And
Yeah,
it's not the case all the time. Sometimes I go into something and I have to write my way through the thinking.
sure.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'd say it's the same for me.
Yeah.
It really
Uh,
depends on the subject.
Tell us a little bit about your piece in Hodgepodge issue 4.2, which is very different from the piece from the last one, uh,
Yeah.
in style, tone, everything. It's just delightful as a person just reading.
Thank you. It's very different from anything I've ever written. Um, so I sort of it, with Hodgepodge, we write based on these image prompts. And the image that I had was of I think it was a lighthouse or some sort of building on a little island in the middle of a stormy sea. And my mind immediately went to the Maritimes. And I was sort of thinking about the idea of refuge and how a refuge can be something that we long for, but that can also betray us. And um, so, shall I talk a little bit more about okay. So, there were these big forest fires in the maritime provinces of Canada over the last summer. And I remember watching some of the footage about these fires and thinking, it's so, um, it's, I
Or
always
just,
think of the Maritimes.
you're in Quebec, right? I just want, just so people know.
Yeah, yeah, I live in Quebec, which is in the middle of the country, and the Maritimes are pretty far away. But we always think of them as very kind of wet and rainy and, you know, on the sea. And the notion that there were just these forest fires that were raging through the provinces just struck me as so kind of like it was like a cognitive dissonance in a way. Um, and then anyway, so I guess it was just sort of there floating around in my mind. And then I saw the image prompts of that building, and it immediately made me think of Newfoundland, a place that I've never been, but that I've kind of always wanted to visit. Um, and when I was young, I had a roommate for a couple of years who was from Newfoundland, and she had the most hilarious stories to tell. She was the funniest person I ever met, and she loved to sort of um, talk in the Newfie accent. By the way, there are many accents in Newfoundland, but she would just regale me with hilarious stories and using all these different accents, and that has always stayed with me too. And so I don't know. I mean, the things just came together, and I decided I wanted to write a story about the Maritime, about kind of about Newfoundland, sort of evoking the humor and self-deprecating, hilarious girl that I knew all those years ago. Um, but set in this time of change, which is, the change, climate change, um, because forest fires in the Maritimes on that scale are not supposed to happen, and they are happening now. Anyway, so I guess, when I sat down and started to write, I was really just having fun playing with accent and dialect. And then I was just writing and writing and writing, evoking this sort of almost kind of mythical place, because I don't name where it is. Um, and then I sort of got halfway through and realized, oh, I better have a plot. So then I introduced the plot, and you and your fellow editors cleverly and rightly pointed out to me version one that maybe there was a little bit too much setup, and I thought, oh, but wasn't it fun? Wasn't it fun? But yeah. So we cut a little bit of that, and by a little I mean a lot. But um, and I guess the other thing is I am not a Newfoundlander. I'm not surrounded by Newfoundlanders in my life. And I didn't want to say this is a character from Newfoundland. I wanted to be sort of just kind of maritime and somebody who loves books and loves language, and is sort of delighted by her own heritage and really personally affected by these fires that are happening, and feeling kind of like her home province was kind of her refuge. She stayed there. It's not an easy place to live, but she loved it all her life, even though it's gone through hard economic times, but she stayed. She made a life for herself there. And kind of a proud life built around the idea of this, the type of weather and climate and how that affected the history of her province. I feel like I'm babbling a bit, but anyway. And then all of a sudden, she's confronted with this new reality. She's a middle-aged woman. She's having some friends come to visit from another province. She can't wait to show them this place that is so much a part of her identity. And then this huge forest fire sweeps through, and really knocks her for a loop. So I wanted to talk about that. Um, and I wanted to use some dialect and some expressions, and sort of impart a little bit of a sense of the musicality and the fun that you can have with the language, while not engaging in the dreaded cultural appropriation. But I couldn't really get around it. I am culturally appropriating. It's true. So I don't know. I was trying to strike a balance there, but I mean, newfies might read the story and say, "Oh, she got it all wrong," or she only was able to, or to get it half right or something. So disclaimer: it's not Newfoundland. It's a place that's like Newfoundland, and it's really more a story about nostalgia and reckoning with change of different kinds. In particular instance, really mostly climate change. Yeah.
Which reminded me a little bit of your novel. It's
Yes.
like,
I think these are themes that, yeah, that sort of do wend their way through quite a bit of what I write. Yeah.
yeah, we're close to the end. So I just wanted to ask if you had one piece of advice to impart to other writers who are
Oh,
listening.
good Lord.
I
I am
know.
not the person to look you.
But just or words of wisdom, something that some sort of nugget that you feel could be helpful, anything.
Read, 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 read. Get good at language. Develop your love of the language that you're writing in. Um, I should probably say get really good at plot because that's something I need to work on. But I can't say that. I can't say that. What I can say is that if you're going to write beautifully, then really learn to respect and adore your language, whether it's English or whatever language that you're writing in, and other people will love it too, and they'll appreciate you.
I think people are not reading the way they used to. So I actually think that's really important. And it's something, it feels so simple, but I really think people are not reading. And
They definitely aren't, and people are also losing access to the richness of our language, and as a result, they're not able to express things, as beautifully or as deeply or profoundly or precisely as they could if they just had, you know, better words. So I think it's really, really critical, not only to the writing, but also just fundamentally to communication and to maintaining a profound relationship, not just with the written word, but with one another. So that would be my advice.
to bring it full circle.
Yes.
Thank you so much.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
So delighted to have a
Good summer.
dry summer as part of issue 4.2. And
Well, thank you for having it. Yeah, I can't wait to see the magazine. It's going to be so fun. I'm going to tell all my friends.
yay!